Hi, I'm Jennifer Jill Araya.
And I'm Sarah Beth Goer.
Welcome to the Crafting Audiobooks podcast, where we discuss the art and craft of audiobooks, and we aim to go deep quick.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are here today with Erin Spencer, executive producer and sometimes narrator. And Erin is also the owner of two production companies now. Erin, let's start off the top. This is a little, we normally are a craft podcast here, but we had some interesting business perspective as to why Erin has recently split her company into two companies, now One Night Stand Studios and Bespoke Audioworks. Erin, will you tell us a little bit about that decision to split the company into two companies?
Sure. So One Night Stand Studios has been around since 2018. And we started primarily with romance, although we did do non-romance from time to time. At some point a few years ago, we became production partners for some publishers. And everyone was fine. No one balked at One Night Stand Studios. But like, for instance, doing a young adult or middle grade audiobook for Scholastic started to feel a little bit like, do I want to say One Night Stand Studio, or not me, but do I want the narrator to say One Night Stand Studios in the credits? It just felt incongruent with like the branding of that title. And as we got more and more publisher partnerships and more non-romance, I just thought, you know what? It's time to branch the company a bit and keep One Night Stand Studios for exclusively romance titles and Bespoke Audioworks for all the other titles. It's the same team. It's the same process. Nothing has changed other than the credits, right? So, I mean, in a way, narrators might relate to that when they think about, like, do I want to have a pseudonym? Why or why not? And I don't think if I kept One Night Stand Studios forever, that any of the publishers would have not worked with us because of the name. But just for me to sort of compartmentalize the branding, it felt right to me to like diverge and have these two things. So narrators may do the same thing when they create a pseudonym or a few pseudonyms, who knows? But it's understandable, and yeah, that's why I did it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to get to hear about, because I think most of our listeners are probably narrators. So to notice, like, hey, that branding that one might apply to their pseudonyms is applying to production companies as well, and that makes so much sense.
Totally.
And it's the same sort of thing that publishers do with different imprints. It's so that listeners know what to expect when they see a certain name there. It makes perfect sense to me.
Exactly. I thought of it as an imprint. That's exactly the idea behind it. So they have their own identities, they have their own branding, they have their own logos, they have their own vibe, but, there's the same team behind all of it. So you still have that same like quality and professionalism.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Yeah. And now we're going to dive into we went off the beaten path today, and then now we're going to go back to the beaten path, I guess, of craft, and dive in with our first craft question for you today, Erin, which is, could you speak a bit to how your narration experience has influenced your craft work as an executive producer and vice versa?
Sure. And I would say narration experience has influenced me a lot as a producer. Just the perspective of knowing the narration process. I know and have lived and am a narrator. Like, I know the questions that narrators ask. I know how they think about material, how they approach material, how they may prep or sort of prep or not prep at all. So when I'm working on a title with a publisher or an indie author, I try and ask questions. Sure, I need to know as a producer, but I also try and ask questions that I think narrators are going to want to know and appreciate. And I also am thinking about, like, I try and I always say I'm narrator friendly, I'm author friendly, and I'm publisher friendly because we're all a team. We all have to work together. Nobody is sort of like the top of the pyramid here. Like, everybody really needs to work together to make this program. And I think really being mindful of narrators and their needs uh, helps me deliver a better program to the author or the publisher. So I really am pro narrator. I've been a SAG-AFTRA member for 20 years. October of this year marked my 20th year as a SAG-AFTRA member. I'm very pro-union, not that anyone has to be in the union, but I'm very pro-union, and I really do think about narrators, Also, I understand the feeling of getting a job and how that's awesome.
Yeah.
I also understand the feeling of not getting a job and how that sucks. And try and communicate these things in a way that is, like, sensitive to narrators' feelings. I mean, narrators are actors. And I honestly think narrators are really lucky. I feel like, as far as all the branches of SAG-AFTRA, I kind of wonder if narrators are just, like, killing it and working the most, because there's a lot of books out there, right? Like, you might audition for a on-camera commercial, 75 auditions a year, and book one or zero, So narrators are I feel like they're kind of working a lot. There's a lot out there. And it feels awesome to give actors jobs because I have been there. I know what it's like to be like, I'm this close to insurance. I'm so close. I just need that one more book. And I'm like, oh, I want to give you that book. I want to help get you over that hump. And then also understanding, like, not getting a job or being in a slump and hearing narrators like, oh my gosh, what happened? Everything dried up. I haven't worked for a while. I mean, I can't solve all those problems for narrators, but I'm aware of it and I'm sensitive to that.
Yeah, I'm really hearing how you having you're in a particular you have a particular perspective that can really support the important collaborative process among author, publisher, narrator. And you have a perspective that can really help give that uh, sort of kindness, supportive environment to the narrator that can then, we're doing emotional work in our performances, so it
Yeah.
can make it
Hmm.
a safe, good place for that as well. I was
But also,
particular.
I want to
Oh,
say, like, in regards to, like, prepping,
mm,
I'm seeing narrators prepping less and less and less. I know that some
mm,
people do prep. I think it's a very, very small sliver of narrator pool that's, like, reading a book beforehand. Back in the day,
really?
10 years, yeah, oh yeah. 10 years ago, people prepped. I'm not against it. I'm not going to judge on it. People are busy. So I really try and give so much information ahead of time that I can, because I know that the prep can be really wishy-washy. So I'm like, let's make this great. Let me give you so much information. I like Cliff Notes for audiobooks. That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do for actors these days because I'm seeing this trend. Um, and it is what it is.
How do you see that impacting the finished product? I mean, I can't imagine an actor going on stage or going to a movie shoot without having read the script. I also can't imagine a lack of prepping is going to contribute to a, excellent finished product. And I see the point of trying to provide as much information as you can, but how are you seeing this lack of prepping show up?
Well, Just more mistakes, I think, like as far as like not many times. So like for instance, we provide a pronunciation guide, whether there's 10 words or 410 words. We spend a lot of time making that pronunciation guide, getting that approved. There's many times that it's not read or listened to, that it's not referred to. Or maybe something's not on the guide and people are now so busy, they don't want to stop. They don't want to take a day and ask, how do you pronounce this? The fact of it is, like someone on my team is answering emails all day. Like, this is what we do. This is our business. So, like, ask, you'll probably get an answer within 15 minutes. But then there's the sort of accent things. And I mean, it's the classic, on page 375, it said she had a Southern accent and you didn't prep that one. And you're like, ah. So we really try and dig into all that stuff and ask all those questions before production even begins. So the narrators aren't hitting those speed bumps, or major potholes, depending. Yeah.
I will say I love your pragmatic approach, right? You're like, I cannot control how narrators are going to approach this, and I'm aware that they're getting busier and busier and prepping less and less. So I, as the producer, am going to watch out for this production by providing as much info as possible. Like, wonderful. I applaud your approach, and I agree with you're like, hey, I'm not judging. I myself, like, on the one hand, I have empathy in that I understand, like, it's so tricky, the intersection of business and art here that we're dealing with, because the more hours an audiobook narrator can record, the more money they can make. And literally taking the time to slow down and do that prep that improves the artistic quality of the book, but did it really matter in the grand scheme of how well the book sells? Like, likely not. It probably didn't matter to the bottom line for anybody. Is a choice between, like, do I commit with artistic integrity because that's what I believe in? Or do I say, like, listen, we probably got 9/10 of the way there, and this is a business, and let's move. So I have empathy. I think I'm not quite as neutral as sort of and practical about as you are, in that I'm like, I have such a deep respect for the craft that I am sad to hear that you're encountering narrators prepping less and less. And it's something I wrestle with for myself, because I take the time I need to prep to feel that I'm in artistic integrity with the production. And I am very aware of how that affects my bottom line. And I continually wrestle with myself that I think it is, it's a personal decision, but it also is a decision that impacts the art of the audiobook, in my opinion, but also how much it's impacted and how much that matters to the final listener is subjective as well. So
I kind of feel like, narrators may put some books on a hierarchy or some publishers on a hierarchy. So if they feel like it's worth prepping, then they do. And if they don't, then they don't. I have now come to the mindset that I hope people prep, but I don't think that they're going to. The thing where on the business side for me, I spend a lot more money. So, like, if my pronunciation guide is, let's say just middle ground, 80 words, someone is being paid to create that guide, to look up all those things, to go on Youglish and go on Oxford. And, like, I'm spending a lot of money to make that for you. I'm spending money to create character guides or whatever it is that we're doing. And then when it's not utilized is when it tears me apart. I get very annoyed about that.
Understandably so.
I produce as well. And if I work with a narrator who is like disregarding, I would literally just not hire them again.
Well, I mean, that's that's an answer. But, then also, like, let's say it's a One Night Stand Studios book and it's romance, and, romance narrators are just churning them out, and the people want those narrators. So, I am not even disparaging narrators about it. I get it. They're so busy. And maybe we've all fallen, into on this moment where, like, I just can't do it. Let me just go. I've done it. Maybe everyone's done it. Which is, again, going kind of back to the initial question, how has my narration experience influenced me as a producer? I mean, I've narrated and not prepped. I've made some of those pitfalls. So I'm like, what could I give my narrator, Erin, that didn't prep so she wouldn't have fallen in that pit? Well, let me give a whole bunch of information. So I just think it's better for the narrator if they prep or don't prep. At least they've got all the info. The author can feel heard. Everyone's got a lot more information at their fingertips, and I think it leads to a better end product, regardless of prep or no prep.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And with One Night Stands or any publisher, I always appreciate when the publisher does provide a word list, because I know that the source is one that the publisher has approved and said is okay. Sometimes when I'm doing the prep on my own or having my prepper look up those words for me, I mean, some of them are subjective and you don't necessarily know for sure which way it's going to go. And I love that One Night Stands does get back to people so quickly. Not all publishers do. And so sometimes there have been instances when I've reached out up to 2 weeks before I was set to record and didn't get that answer by the time I was supposed to start recording. And so you kind of just have to go. I mean,
Right.
so having that up front is super helpful.
Yeah.
Well, along those same lines, I would love to know what you think it would be helpful for narrators to understand about your process as a producer, and just what narrators can do differently or better or understand more deeply to make your job as a producer easier. Because as you said, this is a collaborative process. We might be in our booths by ourselves, but we're not actually working in isolation.
Totally. I mean, actually, what you just said about, like, timeline and getting, hearing back, that is something. Timeline is sometimes not up to me. It is up to the producer. It is up to the author. So I can go, hey, I just got your email. Let me find out. And then I don't find out. And that's just like, oh God. And I hate that. I hate that for me. I hate that for narrators. So yeah, timelines. The manuscript is late, out of my control. Responses on something I don't have an answer to. If I have an answer, you're going to get it fast. If I don't have the answer and I have to get it elsewhere, I can't take, I can't speak to that. Yeah, so timelines can be tricky. And I mean, I work on a schedule. I work on dates, specific dates. And I know narrators do too. And when those dates don't line up as promised, it's not great. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for me either. So it's like, yeah, we reach out and we say, hey, can you push this a week? I know narrators are annoyed. I'm probably annoyed, but like, that's all I got for you. I need another week, and that's all we can do.
It sounds like a takeaway would be, let's be kind to each other and presume that we are all doing our best. And granted, there may be some people in the industry who really aren't doing their best, but we can't really know. So, like, why not assume good intentions and interact kindly regardless?
Yeah, exactly. And also it's like, let's say I'm reaching out to a narrator. I'm doing a book for Hachette, let's say, and I know the release date. I know all the dates in this packet, right? And I'm reaching out to a narrator and just being like, hey, are you available in these dates, it's kind of a yes or no question. I mean, you can say no, but that's fine. And that just means you may not get it, and it's like, is this like a deal breaker? Maybe, or maybe not. I mean, you can say yes, you can say no. Just speak your truth in your email about what your availability is and just let the chips fall where they may. Again, sometimes there's wiggle room and sometimes there isn't. Um, Asking for more money, sometimes that's sometimes there's wiggle room and sometimes there isn't. Sometimes you ask for so much that you've lost a consideration, you know. Um that it's such a fine line. Like, I don't even know how to advise on that. Do what feels, right for you as far as your schedule or what your rates are, but just know, like, you don't have to take everything that's offered. You can ask for something different, but that doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
Sometimes the budget on a book is what it is. There is no wiggle room or tiny, tiny bit of wiggle room. I feel like a good tactic is, oh, I'd like to make X, but if you can't do it, let's talk about it.
Sure. Just showing that you're willing to
Yeah.
collaborate and have that discussion at least.
Exactly. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, because I don't like publisher books. I don't decide. I don't get to say, like, it's not my budget, right? So I'll have to go back and be like, well, this person would like to make X, but they said that if we can't do it, that they could work with us. Well, then you might be more apt to stay in the running than if you just kind of come in with like a hard number. But again, that's on the narrator's sort of choice. It's their business. So you guys run it how you feel like works best for you. Casting, that's another thing. It's like, just because you don't get something doesn't mean you didn't do a good job. I And
Yes.
that's it. I mean, that's such a thing to say, but it's true. Sometimes it's just like you do an audition and you did a good job and 4 other people did a good job as well. And I know the book and the author and the publisher and the editor know the book better than you do because you only read that 5-minute audition material and it's like, this is one person just seems like it's right for this whole book. I mean, I don't even know what to tell you about it. And it doesn't matter if you have like hundreds of books. We literally cast something on a Hachette title, brand new, no 0 books. And she booked it. She was just right for it. So it had nothing to do with experience or home studio setup or any of that.
Mm.
But yeah, that's it. And another thing, we try and get all the answers and info that we can. And sometimes if we don't get it, it doesn't mean we didn't ask. A lot of this, and especially talking about romance with trigger warnings, it's like, you didn't say that there was this in there. I asked all the questions that I asked for all of this stuff. Maybe the author didn't consider that a trigger, or maybe they forgot, or, I hate that. Especially, and I have, in our database and our narrator roster, like if you fill out our roster, it asks, what are your no-goes for triggers? So I don't even offer you something if I don't think if I know it's a no. But we do try and get all the answers and info that we can before, you start. So you can make an informed decision about your work. So that's it. I guess that's probably not it. There's probably more, but that's all I can think of right now.
That's it. That's it for now in this moment.
Right. Again, sort of what strikes me as like the through line of pretty much everything you've said so far in our conversation today, Erin, is how much this is a collaboration and that we can trust and should trust maybe that the people we're working with are making that good faith best effort. Your comment about just because the answer doesn't come doesn't mean that we didn't ask for it. Just
Right.
give people the benefit of the doubt that they did try to find out this thing, or they did try to get whatever for you as a narrator.
Yeah. Well, and it's happened before where it's like, we're on this timeline. Okay, what is more important, the timeline or this pronunciation of this name? Which one do you want? Well, okay, well, now the narrator's finished. You finally came back to me with this pronunciation. It is now wrong. Now we are 625 names. Like, that's not my fault, and it's not your fault. Whose fault is it, publisher? No, I'm kidding. But again, it's not the publisher. Maybe the editor didn't get it. Maybe the author didn't get. I mean, there's so much going on, and everyone, like you say, is doing their best and trying to get all this information. Nobody wants anyone to have all these pickups. And no one wants any productions to be running late and behind. Just like when you get sick, that's out of your control. You're like, hey, I can't, my voice is shot. I can't do this for 4 days. Well, what am I going to do about it? We're going to be late. Or I'm going to ask my editor, please, I'm so sorry. Then the editor's really taking one for the team here and pushing and working a weekend or working late. That's about everyone is really, I feel like, tries to go above and beyond, at least on my team, to make this as easy and seamless and informed as we can so everyone feels supported and is happy with the work that they do.
Absolutely. Going back for a moment to the subject of casting. We're curious because you have so much experience on both sides of the auditioning process. What insights you can offer to narrators regarding how to approach the art of auditioning?
Mm. Well, label your files as asked.
Yes, help the producers. That's the theme of this episode is let's all help each other.
um, I'm serious, but I'm kidding. I think just honestly, sometimes following directions like file labeling, if I say, and I always say no slate at the top, and then I hear someone slate, it's like, oh, now I'm going to go edit that. Now you just gave me like somebody some work because I don't like slates at the top. I want whoever's listening and deciding to get right into the work. We can put your name on the, file name. Let's get right into the storytelling. And I think that, my advice on auditions, if it's something that needs an audition, if it doesn't, then it's just your Audible library that we're looking at. But, read that if you've even got a little bit at the top or the bottom that is not part of the audition, but you can read everything on the page that you can, and make the best choices that you can. Feel free to ask questions. I feel like more experienced narrators ask more questions.
Hmm.
And I wish that the newer up-and-comers asked more questions. Like, do you want the dialogue? Do you want it's first-person POV, British accent? Do you want that in the dialogue or the whole narration? I mean, it's okay to ask, or I mean, you can take a stab at it. But if you are not sure, just ask. It's not any big deal to ask. So yeah, feel free to ask questions about things.
So again, back to the theme of collaborating, don't be afraid to collaborate to gain the information that informs the performance that will be more likely to be of use to the
Exactly.
publisher, the author, the producer.
Exactly. If you just have a question about the accent or if it wasn't clear or a word or a name in the audition material. I have to say, sometimes I don't know the answer, but if I give everyone the same answer, it's Smythe, say Smythe, and you all say Smythe, and then the author is like, well, it was supposed to be Smith, but everyone said Smythe. So it doesn't annoy them as much because then like everyone was on the same page. But it's like when that one person just like butchers a couple of names, they're probably not going to get it because they're, the author or the editor, whoever's deciding, is just sort of annoyed about it.
Oh my gosh. I
But
think about that all the time when there's an ambiguous, like made up name or place. I think about like, should I bug the producer to ask how they want this pronounced? Or should I just go with it and we'll all assume that the narrator can be informed later? And will it subconsciously influence my audition and not get me cast if the author didn't like how I pronounced the name? But do we even have time for me to get an answer here? And the producers have a lot of emails in their inbox. Like, I think about that all the time.
I would ask, give it, a couple of hours. If you don't get a response, just do it. Just be on time with it. But yeah, just go for it. But I would always ask, why not? Because everybody's wondering the same thing. You're not alone.
Sure. Yeah. And that is a really good point, that even if the person listening and evaluating those auditions is trying not to let that influence their decision, it probably subconsciously will, because it's going to annoy them that the name is being pronounced not the way that they feel like it should be. So,
right.
Yeah, just ask questions.
Just ask questions. Mm-hmm.
That's a very good nugget of wisdom. Thank you for sharing that, Erin.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, we are at our final question, which all three of us will answer. And the question is, what is exciting you and filling you with joy about the craft of audiobooks right now, today, with what you're doing, what you have going on right now? And Sarah, I'd love to hear from you first. What's exciting you today?
Well, today I just brought a funny, silly little thing. So on my computer, I have a folder where I save auditions. And I have a folder where I am working on like whatever my current projects that I'm actually have been hired to record. And for my brain, like 9 times out of 10, when I go to save an audition file, I accidentally open the current projects folder instead and like go to save it there. And I love that because I think my brain, I think it's great in that when you go to do the audition, to take such ownership over that, your choices that you're making and like what you would bring to the project, that it's like you already are cast and that it's your book. And so I love that my brain, like, sort of, I have tricks itself and goes like, yeah, this is your project, right? And I just love sort of that level of that as an analogy of like level of like commitment in that moment. And then, let it go and move on because it's not your project anymore after you recorded the 5-minute audition or what have you, unless you find out that it is. So just a fun, silly little one today.
Well, as we were saying before, you can be excited by the small things in life just as much as the big things. And I think that is a fun way of your brain saying that you did that audition really well and you nailed it. I love it.
Yeah.
Erin, what about for you? What is exciting you about the craft of audiobooks right now, today?
Oh gosh, I feel like this is a big answer. I'll try and make it short. I love so many people have home studios now, so it's really easy to hire people all over the world. I love the writing that's happening, and that the writing has become like really kind of authors are doing all kinds of fun and interesting things with formatting that we can sort of play with and production, and own voices and casting. Big shout out, I feel like, to all the editors out there, the unsung heroes of audiobooks. I'm so excited about my editors that because we have staff editors here and I work with them really closely. They deeply care about what they do. They deeply care about narrators and the work. The magic that happens behind the scenes is actually really inspiring to me too. Because I feel like there's a lot of assistance that can happen in editing that no one really knows about. The only time anyone thinks about editors is when it's bad, Why is there an airplane? Why is there a stomach grumble? What is a fizzy can of Coke or something? And then you're like, no one ever talks about post when it's good. It's just like, oh, that was such a great audiobook. And the narrator was so good. And the writing, you're like, the editor might have done a lot of magic behind the scenes. So editors make me very excited. Really good editors that are smart and engaged and invested in the work makes me excited.
I love that.
Me too. We actually recently interviewed Jennifer Blom, who is a director and a narrator, but also does a lot of post-production and engineering work. And she also had a lot to say about the wonderful work that editors and engineers do. And yeah.
We've been doing more and more sort of multicast audio drama-ish sound effects and original music for Scholastic, and working with a composer that literally creates music to create this world or create this vibe. Stuff like that is super fun. It's super fun. I love that. I love how audiobooks have really kind of, not every book needs that. I'm not saying that. I love just one narrator reading a story, but it's also kind of fun to have these other elements and work with these people, and all the collaboration that goes into that is a ball.
That's fabulous, wonderful, and a beautiful sort of final statement on the beauty of the collaboration in the industry and how meaningful it is. Jennifer, what's exciting you right now today?
Sure. So I normally listen to nonfiction audiobooks because I mostly record fiction, and so I listen to something different. But for whatever reason, the last about 6 weeks or so, I've been diving into the world of fiction audiobooks to listen to, in addition to the fiction stuff I'm recording. And I've listened to a bunch of different narrators do a bunch of different genres all in fiction, and I have just been totally geeking out over the wide spectrum of how narrators perform character voices. I mean, some narrators will do extreme differences in their vocal quality and their tone, so it will almost sound like there's actually a different person coming into the booth, even though it's maybe one narrator, not talking multicast here. And then other narrators will do that character work so much more subtly, but it can be just as effective, using mostly style of speech, speed or inflection or, tone, rather than like that actual vocal quality. And it's a spectrum of choices, and there's not a right or a wrong. There's just the actor's choice as they're working on the audiobook, what kind of character voice differentiation techniques that will be most effective for that particular world and that particular cast of characters. And it was striking me as I was listening to my current listen today that it's those kinds of character voice choices that make an audiobook that I would narrate different from, say, Sarah narrating that same audiobook or Erin narrating that same audiobook. And those acting choices to me are the real heart of what the craft of audiobooks is all about. So I have just been loving listening and absorbing a bunch of different character voice techniques and seeing what works really well and what I'm like, well, that could be tweaked this way or that way, but also recognizing that it is choice and it's not a right or wrong. So.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that. I've been, have 5.5-year-old twins, and they really love audiobooks. And so when I pick them up from school, they get in the car and they don't want to talk. They just want to listen to an audiobook. They want to unwind at the end of the day.
So
it's so great. So of course I'm listening to kids books and middle grade and ish books. And it's actually been interesting to listen through their perspective, to see what that they have, who they like, what narrators they like. They have some favorite narrators. I put on a story that they'd heard a couple of times, and then I found a different version, And I thought, oh, let's listen to this version. They said, this is not the right guy.
Oh my God.
They knew.
This is not the right narrator. We don't like it. We don't like it. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, they really, they really kind of align themselves with certain voices and certain kind of like stories. It's been very interesting to me. And in fact, I've kind of discovered some new narrators that way by listening to. I read, I don't listen as much. Like I listen kind of in like bits and bobs, when I'm like casting around on Ahab or Audible or whatever. But like it's actually been fun to sit with them and listen to full books and hear some narrators really like go for it. It's awesome.
Have you noticed any trends in what they respond to, or is it this like subjective magic that they just connect with certain voices and not others?
I think it's subjective magic.
Do they always agree?
Yeah. They're kind of funny that way. I mean, they're identical too. So they have like 99.98% identical DNA. And they're kind of similar, they have their differences, but they're kind of similar.
We heard it right here. It's nature that connects us to certain voices, not nurture. Now we know. And that was a very scientific study.
Sample
size too.
Thanks. Well, and the funny thing is, so one of their favorite audiobooks is Charlotte's Web, the Meryl Streep one.
It's so good.
It's so good. And I'm like, they don't know who the hell Meryl Streep is. They don't know anything about that, right? They don't know anything about her. But they're like, they think she's so good.
Well, what I love about that is actually like that is a star-studded, like every character that isn't Meryl Streep in that audiobook is like one of the top narrators in the industry, and they're all so impeccably cast by Kelly Gilday, by the way, everybody. We've had her on the podcast twice.
Yes.
And that book is a wonder. Like, I just love hearing all these veteran, deeply respected narrators just rock.
I know. It's perfectly cast, like perfectly cast. But yeah, they and the 5.5-year-olds, they love it. They eat it up, and they don't know anybody names. They don't know star-studded. That means nothing to them. But they're like, this is really good. These people are really good.
They can recognize pure, beautiful, stellar craft.
Exactly.
I mean, that's exciting.
You got to have them next on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Hear their thoughts and feedback about the craft of audiobooks for sure. But that is actually really exciting that like because I think adults sometimes are influenced of like, oh, this famous person is supposed to be good. So yes, I think they're good. Right. And to know like these narrators and famous actor who are so stellar at their craft, like that mattered and came across and made an impact on your 5-year-old twins, and the casting was so brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the editing, supported that experience in ways that I'll never, know all the intricacies about,
Well, and there's no sound effects. There's no, additional music. Maybe there is on like Tops and Tails or something, but like it is just narration. And a story well told, and a great story. Again, they don't even know what that's a classic book. They literally come in knowing nothing. It's kind of amazing. Maybe I should assign them up to be casting directors for me.
Yeah, there you go. They clearly have an ear.
Yeah. Don't worry, narrators. I won't do that. 5.5-year-olds will not be deciding your job.
Oh, goodness. Erin, this has been a truly delightful and joyful discussion. Thank you so much for being here today for our podcast.
I almost wish this was on camera so everyone could see how beautiful you all look, and your skin is like everyone glows on the screen. This is you got to go on camera next, you all.
Yeah. Yay for good booth lighting, I guess.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to Crafting Audiobooks. We've been your hosts, Jennifer Jill Araya
and Sarah Beth Goer,
wishing you happy audiobook listening and/or crafting.
Bye for now.